While Angel Heart's source material comes from the novel Falling Angel, written by William Jortsberg, the film screenplay was authored by director Alan Parker. Parker was very faithful to the book, but he added his own differences, his own interpretation. Many ideas from the source material made it into the original draft of the screenplay, but some of those ideas were left out of the film, cut, or changed entirely. In this video, we're going to go over 5 twists from the script left out of the film. Angel Heart was released in 1987, written and directed by Alan Parker, and based on the novel Falling Angel by William Jortsberg. Number 5. More Johnny Favorite backstory. There was more to the conversation between Harry and Connie at the bar. Angel wondered where Favorite went off to. This is when Connie, who was enjoying drinking a Manhattan, tells Harry Johnny Favorite was left at the orphanage as a baby, with a note pinned to his basket with his birth date, February 14th, 1918. Favorite went from being an altar boy to piano player, to headlining the Spider Simpson Band and making $500,000 before the world was introduced to Sinatra. This is the first we're told Favorite was born and raised in Louisiana. The script makes this piece of trivia more interesting when Cypher meets Angel in the Sanctum of the Kingdom mission. In the film, Cypher shakes Angel's hands and makes a comment how they may have met before. This replaces a similar comment in the script, when Cypher says he detects a southern accent from Harry Angel's voice. Defensive, Harry answers he's pure Brooklyn. Spider Simpson shares much more with Harry Angel in the retirement home in the script than the abbreviated voiceover given by the film. In Harry's visit with Spider Simpson, Spider recalls a time where he saw Favorite on a hotel roof catching pigeons with a net, only to dissect them later in hopes of predicting the future. This reference to pigeons is quickly made from Harry to Epiphany in his room.
What does a lady see in a guy that runs around chopping up pigeons,
Number 4. Margaret Krusemark's twin sister. It's where Harry Angel pays a visit to Madame Krusemark, posing as someone who wants his fortune told. The script and movie are in sync with one another, up to the point when Harry taps on the picture of Ethan Krusemark and describing him as a pirate. That's when Harry makes up a brother who met a woman named Krusemark at Princeton who told fortunes. In reply, that's when Madame Krusemark says that was her twin sister, Margaret. This is straight from the source material, but in the book, Millie Krusemark says Margaret went to Paris 10 years ago. In the script, she tells Harry Margaret is dead. Unlike the movie, the scene in the script ends quickly after, without Angel and Margaret having a rather contentious moment before he's kicked out. Of course, all of this was a lie. There is no Millie Krusemark. Why is this important? It's not evidently clear unless you read the source material. In the book, Walt Wrigler from the Times tells Harry the truth. Ethan Krusemark only had one child, Margaret. Meanwhile, Margaret runs to Daddy and tells him someone is looking for Johnny Favorite. And in the screenplay, Harry follows Margaret in the streetcar after the meeting, not before, and ducks out in a museum across the street from Ethan Krusemark's home. It's not said explicitly, but it's quite likely she and Ethan were going to talk about Harry and Johnny. If you were wondering had Margaret brought up the visit with her father, the script covered it more than the film. Number 3. Who did Angel see in the mirror? One of the questions many have after watching Angel Heart several times. If Harry knew who he was, why didn't he know his appearance had changed? While it was Johnny Favorite's plan to steal Harry's identity as well as his soul, being his literal body double wasn't in the cards. The truth is found in both the script and the source material. Harry Angel has a waxed nose from an unexpected incident shortly after Pearl Harbor. He even tells a joke about how it was once melted when he fell asleep in the sun. This could explain his affinity with nose shields. In the conversation with Epiphany in his hotel room, Angel explained he remembered very little before the war. It's all fuzzy. This little piece of trivia was dropped from the film as being too on the nose. and replaced with a very quick reference during Harry's first visit with Cypher when he explained he got a little screwed up. It's quite a nod to the truth that is buried as deep as Favorite's secrets. Knowing this explains a little more with Angel's aversion to mirrors. He doesn't recognize who he sees and likely doesn't like what he sees. Number 2, Toots Sweet wasn't there. For someone supposedly not there, Ethan Krusemark gives a pretty detailed account what happened inside Johnny Favorite's hotel room, the one with the candles and a rubber mat during the night of the sacrifice. Krusemark tells Angel that both Toots and Favorite went to Times Square to find their victim, just some soldier, someone Favorite's age. We even see Toots Sweet limp down the stairs alongside Margaret and Favorite, but the script omits Toots Sweet completely and is not mentioned in Krusemark's testimony. Much of the reasoning comes directly from the source material, where Ethan Krusemark's words are nearly identical to the film. This is because Toots Sweet wasn't there during the rites in the novel either, but Ethan Krusemark was. The novel explained Ethan Krusemark was there as only a witness. He didn't know the identity of the victim, and neither did Margaret. Only in the film did Toots Sweet's name get dropped once, with flashbacks catching him from a distance or obscured. Now you know how Krusemark was able to say in such detail what happened that night. Before we get to the number 1 twist from the script left out of the film, like, share, or subscribe if you enjoy this content and want to see more like this one. Number 1, The Mystery of the Old Woman. The film gives a disturbing and unsettling opening, with a frozen, hellish look of New York City, where stiffs, as described in the script, are found around every corner, because, as Louis Cypher explained, death is everywhere these days. What the film didn't come out and tell you is the woman's murder was in the alley around the corner of Harry Angel's office, when the supposed newspaper stand vendor, Siley, calls out Harry as we hear in the film. He's telling Angel about the body that's still there by morning. Harry takes the stairs to his office and bumps into a scruffy lady putting a mop to the floor. This sort of rankles Angel, as he asks why she's going through the trouble. The scruffy lady named Mrs. Zelkin answered to clean up the blood of a cat found on the stairs. Zelkin proceeds to say she threw its body away in the trash. Harry, not one who approves that method of disposing animals, finds only a bloody newspaper in the bin. Maybe it ran away, Harry suggests. But then Mrs. Zelkin shares that the cat had its legs removed. Maybe it was this cat. Who would be responsible for this cruel and evil act? Those paying attention will notice during the opening credits a lone man walking with his cane. If you were one of the few to associate him with Cypher, you'd be correct. And it may be the only clue left in the film that links one with the other. The script has Mrs. Zelkin volunteer her theory who would have been responsible, and she says it's the devil's work or communists. Likely due to Epiphany's Obia chicken sacrifice, many other references of animal cruelty mentioned in the script were omitted from the film, and I think it was too early to introduce the idea of the occult for a story originating as gumshoe detective mystery. But what we can glean is that Louis Cypher discovered Angel's whereabouts the night before his meeting with him and Winesap. No sooner than he sees the body, Angel's phone rings off the hook. Johnny's favorite scheme is uncovered. Let me know in the comments below, what did you think of the changes between the original draft of the screenplay and the final cut of the film? This is Mr. G of Synergy saying, a waxed nose may be enough to change your appearance, but not your luck. Generally, the first draft of a script lays out its complete story, including characters, places, and events. But during production and post-production, it's not unusual to drop scenes and rework characters to tell the story more efficiently. Sometimes, plot holes are addressed. dialogue rewritten, all make the final product better, if not at a lower cost. The advantage of reading the script is getting inside information and backstory about the world and its characters. It's a look into alternate takes or deleted scenes that may have never been filmed. In this video, we take a look at 5 characters mentioned in the script but had their roles greatly reduced in the final cut. To make the list, the characters needed to be seen, heard speaking dialogue, or mentioned. Angel Heart was released in 1987, written and directed by Alan Parker, and based on the novel Falling Angel by William Schwartzberg. Number 5, Siley. We kick off with a character with a single line of dialogue, and likely the easiest to forget. His name is Siley, a newspaper man and one of Harry's contacts when Angel needs a history lesson in New York City. The working draft of the script gave Siley the first spoken line. He's there to tell Harry his phone's been ringing off the hook, tells him about the body in the nearby alley, and look out for communists. Later in the script, Siley makes follow-up appearances, telling Harry about the history of Pastor John and how he made money buying a hotel, all in cash. What's most interesting, it was Siley who told Angel that Cypher was waiting for him in an Italian coffee shop. But in the film, he's not seen and only heard off camera. While we could argue there was not a newspaper stand to be seen, the first line of dialogue does come from a man calling out to Harry as the sounds of a phone ring bleeds in. This is the only reference to Siley that stuck. After the dead body of a woman in the alley has already been established, Siley isn't needed later. His backstory about Pastor John and the Kingdom Mission is buried, and Harry finds his way to Cypher in the Italian cafe without him. Number 4, Connie. Connie is Harry Angel's inside spy at the Times and possible semi-not-so-serious love interest. Whenever Harry needs some background intel, he calls on Connie to gather research, the result of hard work done by reporters. But no one will miss it. She just has to not raise suspicions at the library. Connie replaces a similar character in the novel. That would be Walt Wriggler. Walt is Harry's go-to when he needs background information. Like Connie, he sometimes meets him in a bar or lounge. In the script, Connie meets Harry in a bar, just as depicted in the film, but they have a much longer conversation. However, the film immediately transitions to Harry's apartment bedroom, where Connie continues giving Harry a history lesson on Johnny Favorite and his fiancée, Margaret Krusemark. The script has Connie meeting Harry twice, immediately after Harry's visit to Dr. Fowler, and they regroup in his apartment a second time after Harry's conversation with Cypher in the cafe when he returns from a second visit to the Kingdom Mission. Connie's dialogue in the script is much more rich and robust, explaining Favorite's backstory, like how he was an orphan, once larger than Sinatra, and what happened to the rest of Spider Simpson's band. The movie does retain most of Connie's investigation work, but pushes her out as fast as she was introduced in the 2 back-to-back scenes. Number 3, The Arcade Man. From Coney Island, after Angel steps out of his car, were fully written scenes describing the sideshow motifs and themes experienced there. After the shot underneath the boardwalk with its gnawing rats, it cuts away to an interior shot of a woman dead, lying on bedsheets splattered with blood. A fat man stares at her from above, with his pale gray eyes filled with fear and frozen in time. The next scene would have revealed Harry Angel had walked into a wax museum, with many figures in violent poses, including the wax figure of Fatty Arbuckle over the figure of Virginia Rappe. Harry asks the Arcade Man where he can find Madame Zora's pitch. The Arcade Man sends him to Izzy. In the novel, Angel visits Coney Island, meets Danny Dreenan, working in a wax museum through an arcade. Dreenan can't help Angel and sends him up the boardwalk. In the film, The arcade man's role is reduced to an unseen middleman, and the fun experience of an amusement park is boiled down to a man getting sun in the middle of January and his wife waiting in the ocean, hoping not to be swept away. Number 2, Blanche. The next entry is one of the more obscure entries, even more than poor Siley. It's Blanche, who bartends at the oyster bar. She keeps Angel company for a moment, telling him about the history of Irishmen building the canals. Harry even makes a reference to a streetcar named Desire, but Blanche's last name wasn't Dubois. Blanche is also credited for pointing Harry in the direction of the phone booth that we later see him wander to. But the film cuts her lines entirely. She's resorted to background noise, and we'll never be sure if this is really Blanche. To add insult to injury, Harry finds the phone booth without her help. Before we get to our last character made less important in the film, like, share, or subscribe if you enjoy this video and want to see more content like this one. Number 1, Spider Simpson. The irony here is Spider Simpson is promoted from the source material written in the novel. There, Spider Simpson is not retired, but speaks to Angel over the phone from Los Angeles. In the script, however, Spider tells stories about Johnny Favorite and Johnny's fiancée Margaret, his strange fascinations predicting the future with dead pigeons, and most of all, Favorite's true love, Evangeline. But in the film, we get a Harry Angel voiceover a montage. While most of the information in the script is told to the audience, it's made through Harry as an abbreviated flashback. The great Spider Simpson doesn't get to make his last vocal appearance. Let me know in the comments below, which of the 5 characters would you had rather see more of? This is Mr. G of Synergy saying, 2 Sisters Cocktails. If you don't know what's in it, it's gotta be good. Alan Parker not only directed Angel Heart, but wrote the screenplay adapting it from the novel Falling Angel, written by William Jortsberg. With the exception of moving much of the story out of New York and into New Orleans, Parker was extremely faithful to the source material, while adding directorial elements that made the film much more haunting. It's a tragedy, much more sad. Many of the characters, the lines of dialogue, and the sequence of scenes come to life from Jortsberg's story. But Parker preserved many subtleties from Jortsberg's work, from props, places, to dialogue. Each has its own interesting backstory, omitted from the film, but shared to the readers of the novel. For purposes of this video, I'm only going to list the easily overlooked elements that, more or less, paid homage to the book. They're little more than trivia. It wouldn't affect your enjoyment had you not known. Well, most of them anyway. Here are 10 subtle homages to the source material. Number 10. The Skeleton Keys. Early in the film, Harry opens up his drawer looking for a pen. We see, among other things, matchbooks, gum, a map, and a pistol. Also seen is a set of skeleton keys. In the novel, these were custom made for Harry to help him open locks. It had cost Angel $500. And in Falling Angel, he used the keys more than once, including breaking into Margaret Krusemark's place, where in the film he helps himself inside. Angel carried a key when he locked Dr. Fowler in his own bedroom. It was Fowler's key, located already in the lock. If you're wondering why he didn't use the keys to break into Fowler's place, because the lock used in the front door was 40 years old and he didn't have anything to pick it. The book and film both have Angel use a crowbar to pry the lock off the door to the basement. The wood frame was soft and made it easy, just as the film demonstrated. Number 9. Fowler's Missing Ring. Mentioned in my Dr. Fowler's video, Fowler had a signet ring with a pentacle on his right hand, sharing a sense of fashion with Margaret, Toots, and Cypher. It is clearly seen when Angel interviews the doctor and carries him into the bedroom, but disappears when Angel returns a second time to see the doctor dead. Was it a continuity error or something the film didn't go through with? We go to the book for answers. In the novel, Angel noticed Fowler was wearing a ring as the doctor was drumming the kitchen table with his left hand. Angel realized it was missing when he returned. Why would Fowler take the ring off, Angel thought to himself. Or more mysteriously, if someone had murdered him, why was it taken? Number 8. Where did the money go, Dr. Fowler? Dr. Fowler took a $25,000 bribe from Edward Kelly, aka Ethan Krusemark, to falsify Johnny Favorite's documents. Watching the film, we think he spent the money on pharmaceuticals and buying the same colored jacket over and over again. There's an old-timey photograph of a woman we presumed was special to him. It's placed on his chest as a memorial joining her in the afterlife. The book explained not only who she was, but what the bribe money was for. Fowler took the money to pay for an operation for his wife's carcinoid syndrome and a trip to the Bahamas, but they never went. Her name was Alice, and she died within a year. Sort of a monkey's paw thing there. Number 7. The Kingdom Mission. Angel Heart wouldn't be faithful to the novel without a trip into Harlem. The Harlem Kingdom Mission is where Angel first meets Cypher. While there, Harry watches the sermon given by Pastor John, with his outstretched hands asking for love and money. There's so much reference material thrown in here, I could make a whole other video. I could make another whole other video. While the book doesn't have Pastor John in it, it does have a Reverend Love. The scene in the book comes in the middle, rather than in the beginning. Pastor John talks about wanting to ride a Rolls Royce. Reverend Love owns one. There are many other curious homages, more than sharing Harlem locations. Both the film's pastor and the book's reverend have well-dressed heavies mingled with their congregation. Most of all, both depictions have Cypher inside, somewhere. The film has Cypher upstairs in the mission's inner sanctum with attorney Winesap. The script explains Pastor John is a business associate of Cypher and may explain Pastor John's success with such a frank and unvarnished sermon. This takes us to number 6, Cypher's Speaking Tour. Cypher meets up with Angel in New Orleans, inside a Catholic church. Cypher explains he was in the area with a speaking engagement in Baton Rouge. For the casual viewer, this makes Cypher look like a respectful businessman, touring the country so he can afford to pay for the suits, Italian eggs, and private detectives. But this pays a very subtle homage to Cypher's hobby. The book has Angel follow Cypher throughout New York City, where Angel sees the mysterious man in the black suit making performances on his free time, from magic shows and small stage performances to religious sermons in Harlem churches. This takes us back to Reverend Love. In the book, Love introduces a guest speaker as a holy man of great wisdom named L. Cypher, but it is Louis Cypher, dressed like a sultan. Angel looks on and listens as L. Cypher gives a passionate speech about being strong and merciless. But Cypher's words, his advice, are strangely descriptive of 3 recent murders. The crowd is driven into a frenzy, waving and shaking their hands. There is a lot in the Pastor John's mission that was inspired from the book, including references to violence inflicted by the congregation. And we even get to hear a smidgen of El Cipher's speech in the film. It's said rather calmly when Cipher explains he has an old-fashioned sense of honor, telling Angel, in a church, he believes in an eye for an eye. Number 5. The Chicken's Foot. Also mentioned in a video dedicated to Epiphany Proudfoot, the chicken's foot made its appearance at the Red Rooster to keep Toot Sweet from talking too much. He has a big mouth, it seems. While the film and its script gives subtle credit to Epiphany, the book goes into further detail and read it was Epiphany who asked a nephew who lived around the corner of the Red Rooster to put a little reminder to keep Toot's blabbermouth shut. The book gives a pretty grounded explanation soon after the trinket gives such a scare, whereas the film encourages your imagination to run wild, believing the followers of the occult are everywhere and around the corner. I guess they sort of were. Number 4. Detective Stern's Coffee. In the film, Detective Stern and Deimos visit Angel a second time after discovering Margaret's heartless body. There's a blink and miss it moment when the concierge enters from our right, and cups of coffee are knocked off the rail and causes a mess. That little kerfuffle is right out of the book. Instead of a New Orleans hotel room, it's Harry's New York apartment. Instead of a concierge, it's Harry who offers the detectives coffee. And like the film, Epiphany is there, but in the book, Epiphany hides in the bathroom and comes out impersonating Harry's housekeeper. Harry frustrates Stern with his uncooperative attitude. Stern crashes the coffee cups, apologizes for making a mess, and makes similar and rather derogatory comments at Epiphany. Number 3. The Choke. It's one of those pictures Angel Heart leaves in our heads that borders between salacious and disturbing. This is a moment out of the book. In the novel, Harry clutches comes in the middle of the night after they're done making it rain. Harry has a terrible nightmare about Cipher and a bear. He grabs Epiphany before he is awakened by her screams. Epiphany screams in the movie too, but when Angel experiences a daymare. In both cases, Epiphany was fine with it. Before we get to the final two, like, share, or subscribe if you enjoy this content and want to see more videos like this one. Number 2. The terrible, depressing meaning of dogs. Covered in a most recent video and in more detail. Otherwise, this would have been number 1. You may want to think about pausing this video and jumping over to that, but in either case, this comes with a major spoiler. This is not for viewers who are easily made uncomfortable. Dogs are seen throughout the film. They're either chasing, eyeing, biting, and calling out to Angel. Was it a theatrical prop of life in the 1950s, or was there something behind it? During Angel's interview with Ethan Kruzmark, he asks many questions in the film but one. What happened to the body of the young soldier sacrificed for Johnny Favorite's fame? In the book, dogs weren't part of the story or even background noise. Not until Angel's final conversation with Kruzmark did Kruzmark confess the body was dismembered and fed to his hunting dogs. It's an homage to Harry Angel sprinkled throughout the film that's both subtle and sadly tragic. Number 1. Redecorating Toot Sweet's apartment. Detective Stern brings news of Toot Sweet's murder to Harry Angel. Among his descriptions were the murderer then took to redecorating his apartment with the poor jerk's blood. To the uninitiated, it's imagined the walls were splattered everywhere with blood. The movie universe kept it simple, leaving it as an unseen description of a terrible crime. But the book described it quite differently. After seeing the pictures in the newspaper, Epiphany explains to Angel, Toot Sweet's blood was used to draw bloody scribblings of voodoo symbols, though they were drawn by someone familiar with magic signs, but unaware how to draw them correctly. Epiphany hints that it could be someone introduced to the obeah but not fully educated, and the signs point to Johnny Favorite. This begins to make Epiphany scared, and she runs to Harry Angel for protection and comfort. Perhaps that was Johnny Favorite's plan all along. Let me know in the comments below, what was your favorite homage from the book to the film? This is Mr. G of Synergy saying, sometimes the devil does go down to New Orleans looking for a soul to steal. Written by William Jortsberg, his novel Falling Angel was very faithfully told through the lens and screenplay by Alan Parker. The characters come to life, and not just Harry Angel or his antagonist Louis Cypher. Many other characters are right from the novel, some quoting word from Jortsberg's work. However, there are some not to be found in the book and are the creations of the director, who happened to write the screenplay. For the sake of the video, we'll only discuss the more important characters. We won't be mentioning again the concierge and her coffee, or Ellie and her boyfriend, nor the musicians and singers, or anyone asking for a tune. Have a drink and relax as we go through the list of characters in the film, but not in the source material. Number 8. Pastor John. The mighty and powerful Pastor John entertains his flock at the Kingdom Mission. You'll find him trolling for money and demanding to be paraded in a Rolls Royce. He may not be Ramses of Egypt, but he is an influential figure thanks to his association with Louis Cypher, who you'll find upstairs in his inner sanctum helping himself to some wine. While you won't find Pastor John in the book, there is a Reverend Love who makes an appearance in the middle of the novel. Reverend Love greets his followers inside the new Temple of Hope, also in Harlem. Hosting guest speakers, one of them is Louis Cypher himself, as a holy man of great wisdom named El Cypher, dressed like a sultan, who makes an over-the-top inflammatory sermon. What the book and the film have in common are the two men's implied association. See, Johnny Favorite isn't the only person Cypher had helped in their career. A little piece of trivia. While Pastor John wishes for a Rolls Royce, Reverend Love has his and chauffeurs Cypher around the city in it. Number 7. Connie. Connie is Harry Angel's inside spy at the Times and possible semi-not-so-serious love interest. Whenever Harry needs some background intel, he calls on Connie to gather research, the result of hard work done by reporters. But no one will miss it. She just has to not raise suspicions at the library. Connie replaces a similar character in the novel. That would be Walt Wriggler. Walt is Harry's go-to when he needs background information. Like Connie, he sometimes meets him in a bar or lounge. Numbers 5 and 6, Izzy and Bo. It's the off-season in Coney Island. When Izzy isn't biting heads off rats, he's enjoying the sun out by the beach. Meanwhile, his wife wades out in the water, hoping to treat her varicose veins because she's a little on the heavy side. This is where Harry Angel hopes to track down some of the performers and ask if they remember Johnny Favorite or Madame Zora. This one scene and its two characters tells their story much more efficiently than the novel. So much so that Bo isn't given a name in the film and it's only mentioned in the script. To understand how trimmed down the film is, we take a look at the script and a scene not filmed. Harry Angel arrives in Coney Island and first visits a penny arcade and wax museum. While distracted at a Fatty Arbuckle exhibition, a man at the arcade directs him to Izzy. He is never seen and only mentioned once. What does Izzy do? He points to Bo. What does Bo do? She mentions Favorite as the man with the golden tonsils, tells Angel don't be a gazoonie, and reveals that Madame Zora was Margaret Krusemark. In the novel, Angel visits Coney Island, meets Danny Dreenan, working in a wax museum through an arcade. Dreenan can't help Angel and sends him up the boardwalk to talk to freak show performers. Angel finds many enjoying their day off and is greeted by Mr. Haggerty, a tattooed man who was enjoying playing cards with other sideshow artists, including an alligator man, a giant, and a diminutive, bearded woman. But there was also the fat lady, who, in a delicate voice, speaks up and confesses she knew Zora. Like Bo, she remembered Favorite as the man with the golden tonsils, and only remembered Zora packing her bags one day and left. But the fat lady wouldn't share anything more and offered another name, Paul Boltz. Boltz was a misanthropic man with a misshapen head who lived alone in an amusement park. Harry sneaks in through a hole in the chain-linked fence and is greeted by Boltz and his gun. In their tense conversation, it is Boltz who tells Angel Madame Zora was no gypsy, but a debutante. And when asked about Margaret, Boltz says to Angel, "What'd you take me for, a Gazuni?" It is Boltz who explains Zora and Margaret are one and the same. Numbers 3 and 4, Mammy Carter and Toothless. Found in New Orleans, Mammy Carter runs a bona fide herbal pharmaceutical business, specializing in High John the Conqueror root. It's where the store owner, Carter, and first citizen Toothless tell Angel about the tale of Evangeline, including her death awaiting for some man. Angel mentions a Mammy Carter store in Harlem run by Evangeline, and that's where the similarities between the book and the film ends. In the novel, Epiphany runs the Proudfoot Pharmaceuticals at the corner of Lenox and 123rd Street. This is where Angel meets Epiphany and is told her mother had passed. Angel's line, "She left you a lovely name, Epiphany," is said here. But unlike the film, where Epiphany replies her mother left her little else, in the novel, Epiphany brags the store her mother left her had been making a profit for 40 years. Number 2, Epiphany's son. If you haven't read the book, you may be surprised that Epiphany is without a son. This is a creation of Alan Parker. The little boy says nothing, does little, but point his scrawny finger with the image of Louis Cypher on his face. The major difference the boy contributes in the film in relation to the book comes in the end, where Detective Deimos appears from the back of Angel's hotel room. In the book, he is empty-handed and makes a snide comment, while in the film, he is silent, saddened, with Epiphany's son in his arms. Before we get to number 1, like, share, or subscribe if you enjoy this content. Now off to the final character in the film, not found in the source material. Number 1, the Lady in Black. Another and most profound creation of Alan Parker is the mysterious Lady in Black. The figure appears many times in the film. Real or ethereal, metaphoric or dreamlike imaginary, she may represent many things to Harry Angel, perhaps to Johnny Favorite as well. This recurring theme is a haunting addition to Parker's tale that only made Georgeburg's story more terrifying and tragic. This is the best example where Parker went above and beyond the source material, yet respected the narrative and made Angel Heart what it is. Let me know in the comments below which of these characters not found in the novel contribute most to the film. This is Mr. G of Synergy saying, don't play jump rope with Louisiana law. Published in 1978, Falling Angel was written by William Georgeburg. It is a detective mystery novel that can be described as horror. Alan Parker would later adapt this story in Angel Heart in 1987, where he both wrote and directed his film. What is the book about? Falling Angel is set in 1959, where private detective Harry Angel is hired by one Louis Cypher to investigate the whereabouts of Johnny Favorite. Favorite was a popular crooner in the early 1940s before a wartime injury sent the singer to a private hospital in a vegetative state. However, Favorite is missing, leaving a cold trail for Angel to follow, who must navigate the streets of New York to Coney Island to uncover elusive leads. In his detective work, Angel meets Epiphany Proudfoot, the daughter of Favorite's secret love. Together, they trailblaze the big city through its many sights and avenues. Angel's experiences descend into the bizarre before he discovers he's in the middle of an occult conspiracy. His search for Johnny Favorite becomes a very personal one. Falling Angel starts off as a gumshoe detective story. It has the many tropes you'd expect of a private eye tale set in the Big Apple, going into many and interesting places, meeting different characters, sneaking around, going under false identities, and unraveling a mystery. However, things turn strange, and Angel's mystery, as well as his client, are not who they appear to be. What's most interesting, Falling Angel is told in first person, with Harry Angel narrating the entire novel. We get inside his head, know about his background, what he's thinking. His journey becomes ours. Before I get into my review of the novel, if you haven't seen Angel Heart and don't want to hear any spoilers, jump to this time code and you'll be good. What if you're a fan of Angel Heart? If you watched Angel Heart many times and continue to see new things, Falling Angel is a must-read. You'll pick up many Easter eggs that are in the film that are homages to the book, whether it will be the characters, things, and even lines of dialogue that seem to be too clever. Alan Parker did a fantastic job taking the characters, places, and events to make his own story out of the source material. For fans of the film, you can think of the novel as inspiration for many of the ideas. While we can debate whether or not things in the book unseen in the film are canonical, we get a deeper understanding of many backstories. Examples are how Harry started his agency, more detail about his injuries from the war, and how Dr. Fowler spent his bribe money. The biggest change, of course, is moving the scenery out of New York into New Orleans. True, Angel Heart does show a good deal of New York, with Harlem, the bars, restaurants, even an abbreviated tour of Coney Island. However, it isn't as emphasized as in the novel. George Berg wanted the reader to explore the high and low lights of New York City, 1959, from the skyscrapers to the seedy flea circus magic shows. In my opinion, he wanted to surprise the reader with the occult where you didn't see it coming. Parker took another direction and moved the story into New Orleans, where the occult, voodoo for example, and the city come together in a well-established trope, whether it's cartoons, movies, or theme parks, and the many gift shops help too. Angel Heart prepares the audience to expect a different kind of city with its different practitioners of various spiritual beliefs. Unlike the novel, where Angel is a New Yorker encountering things very off for New York, Harry Angel of the film is a fish out of water. He's the one that's out of place, seeing things that are just quite ordinary for 1955 New Orleans, through the eyes of someone born in England at least. Alan Parker told the story efficiently while adding his own direction, whether it's with character changes or how he depicts Harry's dreams. However, conversely, there's a lot of backstory and character nuances that are ignored or given ambiguous references. They don't change the tone or make the movie less dense. With visual media, the film didn't need the verbosity or background exposition. In some ways, it very conveniently and deliberately overlooks a couple details just to get us further immersed into the story. In my opinion, this is one of the very few examples where the movie is better than the written material. What if you're not a fan of Angel Heart? If you didn't think Angel Heart was good or entertaining, there's little I can say to recommend the novel. Maybe you're interested in a gumshoe detective story set in a big city and want to read the unexpected. In some ways, the characters in the book are more bizarre, as well as Angel's experiences. If you are into reading backstories and personal history more than the mystery itself, then you might enjoy it. I can say that if you wanted to see or know more about Louis Cypher as depicted by Robert De Niro, then the novel will give you that. The Angel Heart Cypher is more of an abbreviation or derivative than what we read in the book. To De Niro's credit, he only needed a handful of scenes to bring the tone of the literary example. If you found certain elements of the 1987 film objectionable, don't look to the book for comfort. All of the ugly tones and sensuality is in the novel. The book, like the film, wants us to feel uneasy and uncomfortable, maybe just a little bit filthy. It's a story about getting a taste of hell, not a smooth float on the Bayou Delta. Before we continue, like, share, or subscribe if you enjoy this video and want to see more content like this one. Your support is so very appreciated. What if you never watched Angel Heart? What we have with Falling Angel, for those unfamiliar with the film, is a period piece story set in the late 1950s, with many passing references to the decade before it. Because it's told in first person, We don't really get a history lesson or a trip through nostalgic New York City. It's more superficial as we're more into what Angel is thinking more than where Angel is, and turns more of a horror novella with very unusual and surreal experiences. You don't need to be intimately knowledgeable or aware of the 1950s. I'm certainly not, but it does help the reading experience if you appreciate the different era and accept a time where being a crooner could make you larger than Sinatra. Speaking of a different era, are you easily offended? Do printed words trigger you? If you are, and made a habit of showing how angry you are on social media, Falling Angel is not for you. There's no shortage of bad words, intolerance, and offending scenes. The novel is fiction, written in 1978, and I don't think William Georgeberg cared about your sensitivities. The book is supposed to make you feel uncomfortable and unsettling. It's not a story about kumbaya, where we all give each other a hug. It's about a detective searching for someone's past, but sees the hell of the present. The novel is pretty short. I got through it in 2 or 3 nights, and it was free with Kindle. It's not too much of an investment if you want to read a novel that was later adapted into a film. In hindsight, had I read the book first, I would be extremely curious how they could adapt the story and tone. However, it was done, and I think done well. While the novel is not a classic, it's a book where you can see cinema inside your head. Let me know in the comments below, what do you think about Falling Angel, written by William Georgeberg? This is Mr. G of Synergy saying, getting invited to lunch by an attorney makes a good story, better if it's not yours. Check out other videos on the channel. Thanks for watching.